I'm grace. I'm God's grace. My passion is for Jesus, because his passion is for me. And I feel the passion of his heart when I work with my clay. Each vessel unique, a masterpiece. And to each and every one, he whispers, you're perfect, you're exquisite, you're mine. Behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in mine. Well, I am grace. I'm God's grace. And it was, a couple months ago. But I was doing my favorite thing with my pottery. I was putting my name on the bottom of a bunch of vessels that I made. My name happens to be Grace. And I noticed that every single vessel had the word grace on it. And I thought, we're all God's grace. But I always thought that I was a nobody, an unlikely, a reject. But Jesus didn't think so. He picked me like a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, like the wife of one's youth when she is rejected. He didn't reject me, he picked me. He didn't create me to be a nobody. He created me to be a very important somebody. And he has a plan for my life and yours that nobody else on earth can do as well as I can. That's what I mean to him, what you mean to him. But it's about 2,500 years ago now that one day God spoke to a man named Jeremiah. And he told Jeremiah to go down to the potter's house. A nobody? But he said, go down to the potter's house, Jeremiah, and watch him. I'm going to speak to you there. So I used to say I'm believing and trusting. Now I say I know that the same God that spoke to Jeremiah, he's here. And that very same God is going to speak to you tonight too as you watch this potter. But I learned how to do this in college. And I think I was drawn to ceramics out of everything that's offered in the art department because it's real messy. I'm a real tidy kind of person, but this you can flick your fingers and wipe your nose on your arm and it's okay. But think of it. You know, our Father, God, calls himself the potter. And I am all over the clay and it's all over me. I mean, he must like messes. But sometimes when he shows me things in my heart that only he can take care of, I think, oh, Father, how can you even want to touch me? And then he reminds me about how I feel about my clay. There is nothing I'd rather get my hands on. There is this wonderful, mysterious oneness that I feel with the clay. I don't care how dirty I get. But I used to do this full time until I started having kids. And I'll tell you about the day that I quit pottery. We had one little girl, and you can get a little bit done with one, you know. But then our second baby came along, little Dane. And at 6 months, Dane was one of those babies that to me looks like a watermelon. I mean, they can hardly bend their arms, and they're kind of tippy, you know. Well, this particular day, I was determined to get something done on my wheel. I was going to push some pots out. And since then, the Lord has said, Grace, I don't want you to push any pots out. Every one is a masterpiece. I don't push them out, and you don't push them out. But this particular day, I was going to push some out. And I had propped my little Dane up in the corner of my patio where I worked at that time. And I thought he was okay. I had, you know, cushioned him a little bit, and I had given him a bucket of water to patty cake in. And I remember I was pulling up a really tall vessel, and I glanced out of the corner of my eye at my little guy, and the poor little fella had tipped over face down into the mud. And I thought, do I save my pot or do I save my baby? I was so frustrated. I thought I quit. I just quit. So I packed it all up and put it away, and I thought someday I can make pottery again, but I can't always love my babies. So any of you younger ladies, if you've got little ones, treasure them. 20 years have flown by, and now at least I have a little bit of time to do my pleasure. But when I sat here, I used to do this full time, and I would sit at my wheel 6-7 hours a day in silence. I like silence. But God brought the verses from Jeremiah to my mind often, and I tried to pick up on them, and pretend that I was God working on this little person to understand more of what he was speaking about himself. Well, I don't pretend anymore. God is the potter. We're just the clay in his hands. But let me read them to you. They're in Jeremiah 18, 1-6. It says, "Here is the word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Arise, Jeremiah, and go down to the house where clay pots and jars are made, and I will speak to you there." I did as he told me, and found the potter working at his wheel. But the jar that he was forming didn't turn out as he wished, so he kneaded it into a lump in order to start again. Then the Lord said, "O Israel, can't I do to you as this potter has done to his clay? Behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in mine." My Father, my potter, is in absolute control of everything that happens in my life, of everything that's happening right now. Nothing touches me except by his hand. These vessels here, they're mine. I have never not been there to do what was needed for every single one of them. They're mine. My name is on the bottom of each one of them. It's a couple months ago now, but at our church there was communion one night. And it's funny, but wherever these go, I know them. They're mine. I see them, I know them. But a couple months ago at church, we had communion at night, and I love to have communion. But I went and I was sitting in the back row, just worshiping. And I opened my eyes and looked down front. And I looked again, and they were using 2 very tall chalices, and they were mine. I knew them, they were mine. Well, my heart started pounding, and there went communion. All I could see was my chalices. Well, when it was my turn to go down the aisle to rip off my bread and dip it in the cup, I just had to. I reached out my hand to touch the mouth of that vessel, because it was mine, the work of my hands. Well, about a month later, they announced communion again. And I thought, maybe they'll use my chalices again. And then I had this secret thought, just wishing that everybody in the whole church knew that I had made them. Well, that afternoon, I was repenting for the audacity to think such a thing. And as I was repenting, Jesus said, "No, Grace. What you're feeling is my heart. That's my heart that you feel. I long to be known through every one of my vessels, to hold each one of them up high, that people could know me and my power through what I have done in my work." That's the heart of the potter. Well, I heard that my whole life. I was practically born in Sunday school. Jesus loves me, this I know. I heard it forever. And all the songs about the potter, I give myself into the potter's hands. I've sung them all, I've worshipped with them all, but I just never quite got it. I always thought that what God did in me and with me, I knew he made me and loved me, but I thought that what became of me somehow depended on me, on my performance somehow. Well, after I graduated from college, I moved out to San Diego, California, and I became an actress. And I did a lot of broad comedy for about 3.5 years. And then I met a man named Bert. Ooh, he was this wild-looking guy. He had long hair, yellow hair, and a beard to match, and he dressed really weird. Well, nothing has changed. He's still got long yellow hair, and his beard is white now. And my mother-in-law and my dad are still telling me that he ought to cut his hair and dress different, but I'm attracted to guys like that. Well, my Bert drank some. And I had never even seen alcohol till I had met Bert. Well, I just figured that a beer went along with this lumberjack image, So we got married and started having kids. But the drinking, it didn't go away. It increased. And we were supposed to be having this godly marriage with godly kids, and well, it just wasn't happening. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know any Christians with problems. So I began to judge and to take control of everything that I possibly could. I was determined that things were going to be good. At least they were going to look good. Out in California, Bert had built our home. Oh, it was beautiful. It was a masterpiece. Everything he did, it was to my specification, But not only his work, but on the interior. There wasn't a wall in this home that I hadn't hand stenciled. The living room looked like wallpaper. The ceiling in the kitchen had little blue checks and black and white cows all over it. It could have been in some decorator's magazine or something. And it was immaculate all the time. We have 6 kids. They were my world. They loved me. They gave me worth. I think that's why I have 6 kids, because they gave me worth. But I was determined that they too would be a cut above other kids. I preached to them every day. They were going to be better than others because of what I had done in their lives as a homeschooling mother. I made everything from scratch. A cake mix was beneath me. I was real involved in things at church with my flute. I played on the worship team every Sunday. I leave before the family, came home after the family. I'd get there at 7 to pray with the men for the body because that made me more spiritual. I had a weekly prayer meeting in our home to pray for our husbands, of course. My performance, it was impeccable. But little by little, year after year, Grace, who she was, who God made me to be, it was like she got lost. It was like she died somehow as she hid behind this facade she had created of this perfect wife and mother. Well, it's about 8.5 years ago now. But God, one day, in his great, great love for me, began to let everything fall apart. My husband, out of the blue, right before Christmas, got fired from a big money job that he had had for 22 years. There was no way we could start over in Southern California with the price of living out there. So we quickly sold my dream house cheap for fear of losing it. And the anxiety and the fear of not knowing what in the world we were going to do, my homeschooling began to fall apart. And as I strained to hold the reins on my kids, the older ones rose up against me, just hating this tyrant that I had become. Well, depression set in. And in the midst of all of that, our 6th baby was born.